Welcome back. The Clinton-Trump face-off in New York has the world watching. While economy was the top issue in that first presidential debate, the personal attacks took center stage. Here's what went down.
Tax, stamina, jobs and temperament. A wide range of issues were touched upon by Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump as they set out on a fiery first presidential debate. While Trump's speech was laden with verbal brickbats, Clinton projected herself as the voice of reason.
She doesn't have the look. She doesn't have the stamina. I said she doesn't have the stamina. And I don't believe she does have the stamina. To be president of this country, you need tremendous stamina.
As soon as he travels to 112 countries and negotiates a peace deal, a ceasefire, a release of dissidents, an opening of new opportunities in nations around the world, or even spends 11 hours testifying in front of a congressional committee, he can talk to me about stamina.
Trump blamed Clinton for the chronic problems faced by the United States of America, only to be ridiculed by Clinton as someone who says absurd things to come to power.
Our country has tremendous problems. We're a debtor nation, we're a serious debtor nation, and we have a country that needs new roads, new tunnels, new bridges, new airports, new schools, new hospitals. And we don't have the money because it's been squandered on so many of your ideas.
This is a man who has called women pigs, slobs, and dogs, and someone who has said pregnancy is an inconvenience to employers, who has said women don't deserve equal pay unless they do as good a job as men.
And as the debate heated up, the focus shifted to the candidates' temperaments.
I think my strongest asset, maybe by far, is my temperament. I have a winning temperament. I know how to win. She does not know how to win.
Clinton.
Wait, the AFL-CIO the other day, behind the blue screen, I don't know who you were talking to, Secretary Clinton, but you were totally out of control. I said, there's a person with a temperament that's got a problem.
The other day, I saw Donald saying that there were some Iranian sailors on a ship in the waters off of Iran, and they were taunting American sailors who were on a nearby ship. He said, you know, if they taunted our sailors, I'd blow them out of the water and start another war. That's not good judgment. That is not the right temperament to be commander-in-chief, to be taunted. And the worst part of what we've heard Donald say has been about nuclear weapons.
The debate might have begun on a civilized note, but it quickly degenerated into personal attacks.
He has really started his political activity based on this racist lie that our first black president was not an American citizen.
I will release my tax returns against my lawyer's wishes when she releases her 33,000 emails that have been deleted. As soon as she releases them, I will release my tax returns.
If she wins, Hillary Clinton will become the first woman to enter the Oval Office. But a narrowing lead in the opinion polls shows just how the Trump magic could prove to be a spoiler. Bureau Report, Beyond.
That was a debate, but our topic, what we're discussing, is who's going to be tougher on terror in South Asia, Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump? Let me introduce my panel to you. Andre Marszal, Bureau Chief South Asia with the Telegraph, continues to be with us. We also have Chintamani Mahapatra, Professor with the Center for Canadian, US and Latin American Studies with the School of International Studies. And from the US, we've got a very special guest joining us, Carle. He's a writer, scholar and former intelligence officer. And that's the person I'd like to start this debate with. Glenn, thanks very much for speaking to Beyond. I'd like to ask you, either or, Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump, have they said enough on South Asia as to how they intend on dealing with the mess in the AFPAC region? All right, we're going to try and connect. That's our guest from the US. We're going to try and get that. But before that, let me go to Mr. Chintamani. Sir, who is it going to be? Do you think, is it Is Hillary better to deal with the terror menace in South Asia, or is it Mr. Trump?
You know, let me be very frank that when we combat terrorism, the president sitting in the Oval Office of the White House is not the person who actually combats terrorists. It is actually his policy by and large, but it is the American military, American intelligence, the foot soldiers and the drones which really do the act. Now, the question is between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, who is going to deal with the menace of terrorism better? If you go by logical thinking, the person who is more experienced and the person who knows the stuff will certainly be a better person to handle it than somebody who is just a businessman and who has some arrogance to say that he has a temperament to win, and he makes it public that he has a secret plan to combat terrorists in ISIS and all. He may not be the right person who can really guide the policy. Certainly, I will say Hillary Clinton is a better person who can handle terrorism because she understands South Asia and she understands terrorism.
But what we've heard from the Trump camp, sir, what we've heard from the Trump camp has been, there have been pretty strong words coming out of there, and there is also an impression amongst the intelligentsia here in India that Republicans seem to go a little tougher on terror emanating from Pakistan than Democrats. Democrats always walk a very cautious walk, as it were. Andrew, what do you think? Do you think it should be Clinton or should it be Trump? Because let me quote to you what Trump has said. Trump has said if elected would get Pakistan to free the doctor who was responsible for the catching of Osama bin Laden, threat posed by people with roots in Pakistan. So he's been strong in how he's worded it. Just because he hasn't been a part of the establishment before, should that mean that he's not going to be tough on terror in South Asia?
No, I think if you're asking purely in terms of who's going to be tougher on terror, then I think there's a justifiable case to say that Donald Trump would be. He's clearly shown that he's not afraid to ruffle a few feathers or go after entire countries. You know, if you look at some of his rhetoric saying that he would ban Muslims from coming to America, I mean that was an extraordinary thing to say. But he's clearly not going to be overly cautious when it comes to how he's going to tackle the threats, perceived or otherwise, to the United States. And I think that presumably would be borne out in his foreign policy. But as strong man, but as you said, he has he's kept his strategy for defeating ISIS and presumably other terrorist groups top secret. So we don't know exactly what he's got planned. Some people are speculating that means he has nothing planned. We will find out.
Mr. Chintamani, do you think we've got an idea of what Miss Clinton's plan is? Because the Democrats, we've seen how Mr. John Kerry has been with Pakistan, even though he made remarks that also please the Indian community. But the fact of the matter is that John Kerry was always seen as somebody, a Democrat there, as someone who wouldn't go wouldn't try too much when it comes to dealing with Pakistan. And I've been to Afghanistan, Pakistan. In Afghanistan also people are very concerned as to terror that is emanating from Pakistan. Do we know for sure, do we know enough to suggest that Hillary Clinton has a strong policy and is going to be better? Or are we just basing it on the fact that we don't know what Mr. Trump has planned?
Let me tell you 3 points here. Number one, no president, no Secretary of State is ever going to discuss openly what exactly is the plan to combat terrorism, because this is not a conventional war. This is a war between the military and the non-state actors. Non-state actors don't have a uniform. Non-state actors have all kinds of targets. So that is why such plans are not debated, discussed openly. Number two, Hillary Clinton spent 4 years as the Secretary of State when President Barack Obama was waging a war in Afghanistan against terrorism. And let me tell you that Barack Obama used drones several times more than the entire 8 years of Bush administration. So Barack Obama was really tough and Hillary Clinton was the Secretary of State. And terrorism is never fought only with the military and the intelligence. And India has very great experience in combating terrorism, and we know very well that it is not just a military option. So Donald Trump may be talking very big and he has a secret plan and he is going to kill all of them. I don't think he's making a lot of irresponsible statements. It is a very complex game, and one has to require the support even of a large number of Muslim population around the world and the Muslim countries in fighting Islamic extremism. So that is why I think Hillary Clinton would be a more responsible and careful person who can handle terrorism better.
All right, I believe Mr. Glenn Carle, author, former intelligence officer, is now with us. Thanks very much, sir, for speaking to WION. I seem to have two panelists here who suggest that Hillary Clinton is going to be better as when it comes to dealing with terrorism in Afghanistan, Pakistan. I imagine you hold the same view, but I'd like to understand from you why. Can you give us specific, can you help us understand here in South Asia who can deal with the terror menace in South Asia better and why?
Well, yes, the comments that I've just heard, I do agree with quite strongly. There really only is a debate as to whether Trump might have an advantage on any point, really, and specifically with regard to India and Pakistan and terrorism, among either the Republican elites or the suburban working class whites who are his supporters. Other than that, there's really no support for him. Now, there are two elements that go on in what passed for his policies. One, the Republican establishment, which has represented its views in the Republican platform, which Trump tries to repeat with a very superficial understanding. And that's to talk tough and to talk about going after terrorism in a more robust way than the Democrats and specifically President Obama have. And then two, whatever Trump imagines he understands himself, what he understands is to project the image of force. But Sun Tzu, a philosopher from the north of where you are, pointed out thousands of years ago that the first element in a military strategy is to know your enemy. And he understands essentially nothing about Islam, Muslims, Islamic extremism, except to mouth the term. So he really understands zero, and to think that by pressuring simply through the use of force, any party, Pakistan, I guess specifically in this instance, would solve the problem, would simply make everything worse. Hillary Clinton, whatever reservations one may have about her policies or her character, I frankly find her character to be quite impressive, and her experience. She nonetheless understands the issue and realizes that you cannot alienate over 1 billion Muslims and simultaneously go after the few thousands who are willing to commit violence in the name of Islam. So the issue is pretty easily resolved. Trump has nothing to say of substance, and Clinton actually does.
But Glenn, did you find it odd that in that debate, I mean, the two candidates didn't really say much about South Asia, and the fact of the matter is that ISIS is a problem for the world right now, and it certainly is, but the terror hub continues to be parts of Pakistan.
Well, it's, as you know better than I, Pakistan as the weaker party in the duo of India and Pakistan, with your tensions for decades, plays the weaker hand, and that means that they foment instability, and through the Pakistani intelligence service will pressure India in Kashmir by fostering acts of resistance or terrorism. At the same time, Pakistan has been unavoidable and indispensable for the United States and for any party that seeks to go after Islamic extremism, because they have geographical access, substantive human access and insights, and not control, but some contacts with parties that we seek to either oppose or to shift. So, this is a two-sided game that one has.
Somebody's got to take a call, Glenn, don't you think? At some point, someone's got to take a call. Every time I'm in Afghanistan, the people there ask me a very simple question: what is America's policy in Pakistan? Because we are screaming from the rooftops that that's where terror is emanating from. This is what India asks the United States as well. And we don't seem to have an idea. And what we get to hear when we speak to some of the sources we have in the American establishment, that they're a bit too scared of Pakistan failing more than it already is. And so it's essentially a Pakistan blackmail that's at play.
Well, there are elements of blackmail, both intentional and unintentional, in Pakistan's relations with the United States. We have to do the United States, have to pursue what seem to be contradictory objectives. And there's no way around it. And this is a nuance that, frankly, I think Mr. Trump just can't grasp. We don't want Pakistan to become unstable. We do want to work with Pakistan against the Taliban or Al-Qaeda. We don't want Pakistan to foment unrest and sponsor or at least facilitate terrorist actions in India or anywhere else. We don't want to alienate a large Muslim population, which is in a country that has a rising, unfortunately it seems, extremist faction, and that has nuclear weapons. So how do you do all of those contradictory things simultaneously? And that's what, frankly, Republican and Democratic administrations, President Bush and President Obama, and before them, the other presidents who preceded them, have attempted to do. Now, in this larger context, there has been a strategic shift, I think it's quite clear, by the United States and by India to improve relations on a strategic level, India and U.S. relations. Now, Pakistan's a big game, but there are bigger games still, and that is the future of Southeast Asia, Northeast Asia, and Chinese-Indian relations, the rise of China and the rise of India. And India clearly is the rising major power, increasingly so with respect to Pakistan, and it is in the United States and global interests that the U.S. and India cooperate ever more fully. That will be perceived by Pakistan as at Pakistan's expense. It need not be,
right.
But that's a larger game.
Right, Glenn. I'm going to go to my other guest, and I hope we can, we're really enjoying listening to here, but I'd really like to get some light on your face. I think Skype connection is pretty good as far as your audio is concerned, but if we can manage to get some light on Glenn's face, that would be very helpful. Andrew, you heard what Glenn has had to say. He's a former intelligence officer. He's written books. He's spoken extensively on it. The problem here is that is India now the victim of America's larger Asia pivot policy, that listen, the bigger threat possibly is not in the sense of terrorism, but in more in an economic sense, is that, and that's where India is needed more to understand that larger game at play, which leaves us with the problem we're dealing with, not just India, Afghanistan and the region, Bangladesh as well. How do you deal with the terror menace in South Asia?
Well, I think, in terms of American-Indian relations, as your panelist has said, they've improved markedly, and I think that that looks like it's going to be the course that continues. But is your question in terms of whether India is getting enough support in battling the terrorist threat?
India or Afghanistan, or maybe talking about South Asia here. There's one part in this continent where terror is emanating from. Osama bin Laden was found there too. There is agreement now, even in the international community, that is a problem. In your country, in England, in the UK as well. So now, how do you deal with the problem? You've got to deal with where the terrorist haven is, and this I've heard from every Afghan I've met.
Well, I think that if you look at when Clinton was Secretary of State, she was part of a team that did try to focus more on South Asia and did try to develop Pakistan institutions rather than simply plowing money into the Pakistani army. Now, that didn't necessarily go to plan, but I think that does show a more nuanced understanding of the issues and an appreciation of the focus that does need to be paid to this part of the world. Whether, how much of that came from her rather than from Obama and the team of advisors around him, we don't know, but I think that possibly gives us a hint that if she does become president, then that could be a strategy that the US would continue to pursue.
Let me take that to Glenn. Glenn, we've all read what Trump has had to say about the aid. He said, I wouldn't want to give it to Pakistan, but I'm forced to so they can deal with a part of terror. I wouldn't want to give them F-16s, but I would give them equipment in a way that they can deal with terrorists but not use it against India. He's also said that India should be in a position to help us when it comes to the nuclear weapons that Pakistan has. Make sense of it all for us. What is Donald Trump here trying to say? He's saying basically what we already know, that the aid to Pakistan would continue and that America may even consider selling more weapons system to Pakistan?
Well, unfortunately, the way to make sense of his comments is to put them in the context and to understand that they are talking points that he has been briefed on, but there's no real knowledge or textured web of understanding and interrelations of thoughts behind them. the United States has provided or not provided, depending on specific policy issues, for decades, military intelligence and financial assistance of all sorts to Pakistan, and will continue to do so. And to say we'll give weapons that you can only use against one party or another, well, I mean, this is just a talking point to play in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, rather than to mean anything that actually is a practically applicable policy. It simply makes essentially no sense. It also, one of the quotes you cited from Trump simply reveals what happens over and over and over, which is a complete lack of understanding of what has happened, what the relations are. He talks about increasing intelligence cooperation and pressuring Pakistan and working with Pakistan on counter-terrorism operations and to go after al-Qaeda, things of this nature. This has happened. I've been involved in the intelligence community for 35 years now, and this kind of cooperation was happening bilaterally with the United States and Pakistan long before I was ever involved. I was still a student. So these things are empty statements that sound tough. The bars of Bethlehem, Pennsylvania.
All right, Glenn, stay with us. We've got the last 3 minutes, and I'm going to get a 30 to 45 second last word to all my panelists. But this last question is a little tougher than our topic tonight, and it is, what should be their policy when it comes to South Asia? Professor Chintamani, let's begin with you. You've got 45 seconds.
Sure.
What would you like to suggest?
Okay, I'll make 3 quick points. Number 1, the time has come where we cannot accept the point that Pakistan is indispensable to combat terrorism, for the simple reason that Pakistan is not combating terrorism, it is promoting terrorism. It is against the, it's supporting Haqqani network in Afghanistan and supporting all kinds of anti-India terror group in Pakistan. Number 2, the time has come where we again should not accept this another line of view that we all want Pakistan to be stable. The fact remains Pakistan is not stable, is not going to be stable. So all of us would agree to the point how to deal with an unstable Pakistan. Number 3, terrorism can never be combated anywhere in the world until India, the US and many other countries come together to isolate those countries, particularly the epicenter of terrorism, which is blackmailing every other country, including the United States.
Right, so don't buy Pakistan's blackmail. I do apologize for cutting you short, sir.
Aiding terrorists.
Apologize, sir. Please accept my apologies. 30 seconds now left for Andrew and Glenn. Go ahead, Andrew.
It's all right.
What should it be? What should be the policy?
I think that having spent time in places like Bangladesh, where there have been a notable rise in terror attacks and an international element to them, whether the government accepts it in all cases or not, I think it's very important that America does not alienate its potential allies in these parts of the world, and that there is a more intensive intelligence cooperation. And I think that this can be helped by the fact that there are mutual enemies even amongst countries in this region which conflict with each other. The potential rise of ISIS in South Asia, so far relatively unproven, but it is something that can bind these countries together and find common purpose.
Glenn, what should be the policy of whoever the president is towards South Asia to deal with the terror menace? We're left with 25 seconds.
Well, I share in some ways what the criticisms are about Hillary Clinton, or they would be directed to me in my recommendations, which are states are important, as the first gentleman who spoke emphasized, but states are not the only issue that has to be addressed, as the second gentleman emphasized. And Islam and the Islamic societies, you cannot separate or treat as non-consequential and only deal with the government of Pakistan. So what you have to do is 2 things that sometimes contradict one another simultaneously. You increase pressure to the extent that you can on Pakistan. You work with Pakistan because they both foment and combat terrorism at the same time. And you try to increase the combating terrorism and make them pay a penalty so they will not foment it. But it's not an either or. Unfortunately, it's an all of the above.
So do a little bit more of both pressure and cooperation. Thanks, gentlemen, for joining us. We've run out of time. Professor Chintamani, Glenn, former intelligence officer, joining us from the United States of America. Andrew, thanks very much for staying with me on for both the debates.